are on page 124 in the book called Tanya. It's the first section of the 5 parts of Tanya called Lakuti Amorim. And we're discussing here 2 levels of love for God. And these 2 levels are also 2 consciousness within a person. One we call the Balatanya, the author, Rabbi Chaim Dalfin, calls the first one Ava Rabba. Ava Rabba means an abundant amount of love or great love. The second one he calls Avat Olam, Avas Olam, the love, the worldly love, a love derived from the world. And he gives us 3 differences between the 2. Number 1, Avas Olam means you are in ecstasy. You aren't seeking ecstasy. You are already in ecstasy. And he uses the words Ava B'Talnugin. It's a love of pleasure. In other words, I'm not struggling to attain the pleasure, but I am currently in the mode of pleasure for God. I have pleasure from God. So I'm using the word ecstasy. In my caption for the shir yesterday, I wrote, ecstasy is not infatuation. Now, I wrote that for 2 reasons. One is because when people see the word infatuation, they click on your YouTube. But really, the truth be told, that infatuation means I seek something and I want to become infatuated with it. Ecstasy is a current state of being. I am in ecstasy. So ecstasy is not infatuation. Ava Rabba, in other words, even if you can imagine, I'm infatuated with God, which is a very lofty experience to be infatuated with God. Nevertheless, there is the I that's infatuated with the God, and there's the I that's meanwhile outside of God that seeks to become infatuated with God. When we talk about Ava Rabba Moshe, both Moshes, Moshe Braun, we have a new Moshe Drucker on our shir from Florida. So the state of Ava Rabba, of an abundant love, that's the state of ecstasy, the state of pleasure. So it's not, I'm looking for pleasure, I'm seeking pleasure, I would like pleasure. All of that would be incorporated in Avas Olam, the lower level of love, the worldly love. And yes, it's possible, and as the Alter Rebbe says in the last part of yesterday's shir, that you could reject all fascinations, all wows, and say, I want you, God, myself. There's a very famous saying of the Balatanya that you might have heard, but it's worth repeating. He said it in Yiddish. Zeh, see, ich will nicht dein Gan Eden. I don't desire your paradise. The Alter Rebbe is talking to God. God, I don't want your paradise. Zeh, ich will nicht dein Olam haba. God, I don't want your world to come with all the promises. Ich will dich allein. All I want is you yourself. That feeling is a rejection of fascinations and illuminations and big lights and big auras and big angels. They're all nice and they're all great. But the feeling of rejecting all of that is an Ava Rabba experience, which is number 2. The Alter Rebbe says the difference between Avas Olam and Avas Rabba, it's gifted to you. You can't buy it in the store, and you cannot create it. If you do what you're supposed to do, and God Almighty decides to give Isser today a feeling of Ava Rabba, it's going to happen. Whether he's ready, whether he's not ready, meaning to say whether he's conscious of it, not conscious of it. In other words, can you prepare yourself for Ava Rabba? You can prepare yourself by getting rid of shtuyot, making yourself a vessel for God. And then if God wants to give you this extra gift, you'll get it. But you cannot force God's hand to give you the Ava Rabba. We also call it Avodas Matana Eten Es Kunaschem. That's from the Torah. 1 second, Moshe. the service of gift God gives the priests. There's Kohen, Levi, and Israelite. Kohen, Levi, Yisrael. So the Kohanim got 24 gifts because they are our representatives. Right? Who's supposed to support them? The Yamcha, the people. They don't work for a living. They're praying and bringing sacrifices and doing all those things. So you give them gifts, part of animals, and you sustain them, etc. So the Alter Rebbe says, this also alludes to the fact that there's a certain type of activity in serving God that's a gift. We know if we ask for a gift, we're rude. And number two, you're not going to get it necessarily or many times. You don't ask for a gift. If you're given a gift, you say thank you. So Ava Rabba is a gift consciousness. And we need to be sensitive to this, to say thank you. Really, thank you. Thank you to Hashem. Now, you're probably saying, well, we say thank you every morning. Moda ani lefanecha. I give thanks to you, God. What's special about this gift? This gift is a very different type of a gift. This is not a gift coming from your fact that you realize you woke up in the morning. That's important, but that's kavas olam. That's a worldly love. I live in the world. I have a roof over my head. I have food. I have friends. I have family. I'm breathing. I'm walking around. I thank you, God. So Avram, that's all coming from the perspective of the world that we live in. Ava Rabba is not coming from that perspective. Ava Rabba is coming from the perspective that there is no existence except God. Like I told you, Einoid Mulvadri. There's nothing besides him. There's nothing beside. Einoid. Moshe, what do you want to say? Moshe Braun. Yeah.
So Avas Olam, we spoke about yesterday, you have to work for it. Right? Is it involved in its lower level? We have to work for it.
Right.
When does it mean we're working for it? We're working to try to achieve. No, we're working in the meditation. His bonus to achieve the Avas Olam.
That's right. That's correct. And it's attainable and achievable. So that experience of love is workable through meditation, through reflection, realization how God created the world and what he wants of the world, what he wants of us as Jews, etc. Let's go now to page 124, and we have the second line. V'hinei Pchinas avazu, this level of ava, pa'amim, sometimes, shekodemes liyira, it actually comes before the idea of fear, of awe, yira meaning awe. Kifi pchinas hadas hamolida kanoida, depending on the amount of focus and concentration that gives rise to love. And I'll explain in a moment. Let me just say the bracket. Hadas, for it is das, it is focus. Das, kolel chasodim ugvuros, that includes both the emotions of chesed, of kindness, and the emotion of severity, of being strict and judgmental. Shehem ava v'yira, which are expressed in the notions of love and awe. Upa'amim, and at times, shachasodim kodmim leired ulizgalis, that chesed precedes yira and chesed is revealed before. What is he saying here? We learned until here, what's the order? The order is yira comes before ava. Now I have to put this in perspective. Especially in Chabad, but even in any Kiruv organization, the usual line is, come, get your feet wet, come into the door, enjoy the kugel, the chicken soup of the Rebbetzin, the dancing and everything else, and start learning. What about all of the I'm going to use the word, negativity in our life, the things that are unhealthy? What about that? So generally, the attitude of Chassidus, of Baal Shem Tov is, You'll worry about that later. The attitude of Musar, which is another school of thought, which means the school of refinement of character, it argued no. Sur Meira comes before Asay Tov. Stopping to do bad and evil and nonsense and things that are unhealthy for you is first before Ava, before attaining love for God. Now here in Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says that the truth of the matter is, in order to really experience Avas Olam Moshe that you spoke about before, that we're speaking about here, you need Yira before. A rudimentary Yira, a basic acceptance. I accept the yoke of God. Until now, I was eating, ham sandwiches, Burger King, and not putting on tefillin, and just doing what I want, gossiping with my long beard and cheating on my taxes. And all of a sudden, I'm going to do tshuva. I'm going to stop. Why? Because I fear God. I have all for God. God says in the Torah, it's not for a Jew. Why, when, where, we'll talk about that later. But bottom line is, put your tefillin on, put the mezuzah on, eat kosher, be a mensch, don't cheat, don't lie, all of that, right? And I accept that. That's called Kabbalah soil, the acceptance of the yoke of God. That's rudimentary yira. That's a prerequisite. The only thing is, because we're so, we're so, what's the word, sensitive. In other words, we're so, if someone tells me something, we get bent out of shape. I remember my great uncle, Reb Mendel Futterfass, he once told me, this was in L.A. when I was a student in yeshiva, he said it to me in Yiddish, but he said, here in America, if you say something to someone, they say, it's not your business. It's not your business. And he said, in Russia, it was everyone's business, amongst the Hasidim. If you didn't jive the other one, and you didn't tell the other one, stop with your nonsense, and get with the program, you weren't a Hasid. It wasn't taken, how can he or she come into my territory? I put up the facade. I remember a man who told me that, he said the worst klipa, the worst idea in America is, it's not your business. The truth is, the Torah says it is our business. Not my business about you and you about me, but we about ourselves. It's our business. What's going on? What's going on with my life? But because we are, weak and sometimes feeble-minded, therefore we let it go. But the truth is, you need Yira. You need Kabbalah soil. And everyone here knows that. Right? Plenty. Before one accepted Torah mitzvahs 100%, they might have belonged to a conservative, a reform, or this, or that. They had a Pesach Seder, this and that. But at the end of the day, you want to do more. You realize, hey, on your own, you realize, who am I kidding? Do I either believe in God's Torah, or do I not believe in God's Torah? And it's not up to me to write the Torah. He wrote it for me. He gave it for me. Anyway, says the Alter Rebbe over here at this point in Tanya, although usually the Yira needs to come before the Ava, the awe is a prerequisite to having proper love, which, by the way, is true in relationships too. If you go into a relationship only in an emotional way, you're looking for a lot of problems. There needs to be a distance between the two people who are meeting. A distance in what way? Emotionally. You're not ready yet emotionally. Intellectually, is this the right type of match? That would be called the Yira, the awe. And once you have that Yira, then the feelings develop of love for each other. But people go into it just with love and heart palpitations and infatuations. A lot of issues come from that. A lot of issues. Because it wasn't based on a solid base of Yira. Yira is necessary for the relationship to grow properly. But the Alter Rebbe says here, Chaim Zev, L'pa'amin. He says sometimes it's vice versa. Sometimes the Ava can come before the Yira. So although we've said it, everything we've said is true, Moshe, but nevertheless, sometimes the Ava kodemes leyira. Veloche. Now let's continue. A very important thought, he says now. Since it's possible for at times for the love to be before the Yira, Efsher leRosha ubal avera, pretty heavy words. It is possible for the wicked person and the sinner and the transgressor, sheyaseh tshuva mi'ava, to do a tshuva coming out of love of God, hanelda b'liboy, that is born in his heart, is generated in his heart, b'zichra yas Hashem. Remember the word zikaron from the last chapter? Again, when you remember God. The seat of all evil is Iser, forgetfulness. B'zichra yas Hashem. When you remember Hashem, then you gravitate to him. Yes, Moshe.
Rabbi Dalfin, the Alter Rebbe's lashon of Baal Avera, or Russia here. So, does he mean, is he being consistent with his terminology of Russia, Benoni, Tzaddik? In other words, when he says Baal Avera or Russia, does it mean for that moment?
No, good question. I don't think so. I think here he means the colloquial Russia.
So how do we understand that?
How do we understand it? So here we are as potential Beinanim, and the Alter Rebbe is saying that even if we have once sinned and we were a Russia at the time, or we are now a Baal Avera, we keep on doing transgressions, there's still hope. Because if you meditate on the greatness of God and it develops a feeling of love, at times it can overpower everything else. So it's an exception to a rule. This entire part today is really kind of a parenthesis. In other words, it's another style. It's another method that comes from time to time, but it's not the ordinary. The ordinary way is Yira before Ava. But I would say, I'm glad you asked that question. I didn't even think about it, so I'm so happy that you asked it. I believe that he's talking about a colloquial Russia Baal Avera. He's not referencing here his definition of Russia earlier. And that's why, Moshe, he adds the words Baal Avera. He doesn't say just Russia. Why does he have to say both, Moshe? He could say Russia. We know what a wicked person is. A wicked person, meaning in the sense of disobeying God's commandments. He doesn't suffice with that. He says Russia ubal avera. So I think he's. Go ahead.
No, it's difficult to understand it because here we've been, conditioning ourselves and training ourselves, so to speak.
Right.
For the terminology of the Alter Rebbe, a person's, let's say Russia for that moment, let's say, so to speak. So I'm just saying it's challenging I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around these, like the colloquial term, because it feels very open-ended.
I understand, but as I said, knowing that this whole section here is like a parenthesis, it's a sidebar, it shouldn't throw you off. It's a sidebar. Can it be possible? Is it possible for someone who's a sinner, a transgressor? In the colloquial worldly sense, you go outside, you ask, who's a tzaddik? Someone does a lot of mitzvahs. Who's a Russia? Someone who does sins. Who's a Benoni? Someone's in between. Without getting to the Alter Rebbe's entire philosophy and ideology that we've been studying in Tanya, you're right. But you can't lose sight of the simple meaning in the colloquial way as people speak about it. The Alter Rebbe here employs it because he wants to make a point. His point is that even someone who is sinning, who's transgressing, and we call him a Baal Avera, which, by the way, that's a heavy statement. You could say someone goofed off, he made a mistake, but when you say someone's a Baal Avera, you mean he is he or she are immersed in their transgression. They enjoy their transgressions. They make a lifestyle from their sins. That's a heavy thing. And Alter Rebbe says, even such a person, if somehow he comes to a point where he reflects on God's greatness, listen, Moshe, this is Ma'asim B'chol Yom, Bali Tshuva. I don't have to tell you guys, everyone knows. I'm not speaking about you, I'm speaking about, people who are really, Bali Avera. All kinds of Bali Avera. And when and if they have that moment, that peak zenith moment of tshuva, they stop. They stop, and they really mean it. And they won't do it again. That's a real Baal Tshuva. And it's not easy. So let's continue. I want to finish. Yes, I'm sorry. Wait, Chaim Zev. No, go ahead.
No, just if going to what Moshe says, why does the Alter Rebbe have to use both Lashon Rasha and Balavera? If you just say Balavera, we would all understand, and then we wouldn't get confused with Rasha.
Right. I don't have the answer, and as you see, when it comes to the usage of two words and one word, it's not the style that I was taught in Tanya by my teachers, and that wasn't the tradition in Chabad. But the Rebbe's father usually points that out. So maybe if I get a chance Shabbos to see, if I see something, I'll let you know. Someone is not muted here, and I hear. Yoni?
Just a question. Yeah, just a question to what an additional question to what he asked.
Yeah.
Isn't somebody, if somebody is in Russia, he's automatically a Balavera? Meaning, like, I don't know what's vice versa, but
so
whatever. But
I hear you, but that's
if you're a person,
so
you're Russia.
That's why I said, and again, this is my own thought. A Russia technically means one time you do an Aveira. Do you know that or not? Yoni, you're thinking of a Russia the way it's used on the streets of Brooklyn. I'm not talking about that. Halachically, Talmudically, a Russia is someone who one time does a sin is a Russia. The Alter Rebbe brings it on the first page of Tanya. The first page. He says if you have an opportunity to learn Torah and you don't learn Torah that one moment, you're a Russia. And he brings a Gemara for that. Balavera means not you did it one time, you did it 500 times. You repeat it. So I use the word lifestyle. Balavera means you're making transgressions and violation of God's will a lifestyle of yours. Intentionally or unintentionally, but you just keep on doing it. A habit. Russia technically means, for whatever reason, today I didn't put on film. For whatever reason, today I cheated my taxes. I broke the law. I embarrassed someone. Okay? All transgressions. No difference between one and the other. Those that believe it's a difference are making a big mistake. An Aveira is an Aveira. A transgression is a transgression. Any transgression. As the Alter Rebbe explained to us in chapter 22 in Tanya, it's severing the connection with God. What's the difference if you sever the connection, whether you're not putting on film today, or reading not kosher, or you're cheating someone, or you're embarrassing someone? It's all the same. So, but nevertheless, so Russia, this is my own thought. Russia implies a kind of a one-time act, not a lifestyle. Balavera means a lifestyle. So he says both, but I don't want to, make up stories. If I see a comment from the Rebbe's father or another, big mind and accepted interpreter of Tanya, I'll share it with you. Let's continue. Please mute yourself. I hear some noise. Okay, let's go weiter. Now he says, "Umikol makoim hayira gam ken klula bo." He says, don't think that just meditating on God and creating Ava is adequate to do tshuva. You need to have what we call a yira, a awe, a fear within love. Memela. It It might be very, very minute. Dahainu, yirei yiras chet. You're fearful of the sin. There are cameras here in New York. I don't know, it's in Bet Shemesh. There are cameras. You go 36, you get tickets. That's the way it is. Guess what? We slow down. We don't want another ticket. Yiras chet. You know that, hey, there's punishment. There's law and order. If not, we have chaos, right? We had the other day, right? As I spoke about. There's law and order. There needs to be law and order. So the law and order sometimes is subordinate, but yet included in the Ava. In other words, Ava must always have an element of Yira in it. Love must always have an element of fear in it. For love to be genuine and good and correct, it must have an element of Yira. That's what the Balatanya says here. It's a Yira, it's an awe and fear of God that's klula. It's included within the Ava. Let's continue. But what's revealed? What's revealed is the love in your heart and in your mind. You see, Moshe, he says, this is from time to time, it happens. Clearly, the Alter Rebbe says, it's a temporary instruction. Avram, Hora Hashem is a temporary instruction. This is an exception to the rule, this entire discussion here that we're talking about. Bashgocha Pratis, through the divine providence, Beis Hashem from God, let's say for the necessity of the moment, Kamaisa Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaya. Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaya did tshuva, right? At the end of, he was the biggest sinner. There wasn't a woman that he didn't have relations with. And all of a sudden, right? Pretty good guy. At the end of his life, he does tshuva and he gives a shout out, God, accept me, right? And all that. And what happens? And I think Rebbe says his tshuva was accepted. What do we see? Here is someone who's a sinner all his life, and such sins. It was a lifestyle by him. Right? And all of a sudden, something happened where he says, Oi, I'm so far, and I reject everything at this moment. And it really becomes about teshuvah that moment. He's forgiven. So in other words, Alter Rebbe says, at times, the person's tshuva and his love for God overshadows the sin and forgives him. Avom, however, Seder Avodah, the normal way of serving God, is not the way we just mentioned. The normal way that is organized and dependent upon man's choice. One needs to preface first Kiyum HaTorah mitzvahs, the fulfillment of Torah mitzvahs, by having the lower level of fear of awe, B'Pchinas Katan was small level, Al Kaponim at least, B'Sur Meirah, by not doing what you're not supposed to, Vasei Tov, and doing good, L'Hoyer Nafsheli Kis, because that will illuminate your godly soul, Ba'ira Torah mitzvah, with the light of Torah and mitzvahs, V'achakach Yoyer Oleh Oiro Ava. And after you have the rudimentary level of Yira, then you'll be illuminated with the level of love. And he says in the brackets at the end of the chapter, Ki v'yohavta. The word v'yohavta, right? V'yohavta Hashem Elokecha, after the Shema, after Baruch Shem, you shall love your God. The word v'yohavta, b'gematria, its numerical equivalent, is based pamim or, twice the value of the word or. Or is how much? 207. How much is v'yohavta? 414. Ki yadu liyodechein, as those that study Kabbalah know about this. What's his point? His point is that in order for there to be v'yohavta, love God with your heart, there needs to be the first or. What is the first or? The first light? The first light is the light of Torah and mitzvahs. Torah and mitzvahs, he says, will be properly done when it's predicated on Yira. So what he concludes in the chapter is, he's saying to us, Chevre, the normal way is Yira before Ava. Is there once in a while an exception like Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaya and we can and it can be experienced, vice versa. It is, but it's not the norm. So what I walk away with from the chapter is that it's very important, especially as people as ourselves, midlife, with children, grown children and grandchildren and everything else, those of us that have that and those that will have it, God willing, we need to start really doing a little more in the yira. We're not beginners. We're not coming into a Chabad house with, at 18 to 20 and 22 and or later and not knowing an aleph and a beis. We've been around the block. So if we've been around the block, it's about yira. It really is, and and a lot of times I just my YouTube piece has had, thank God, already 12,000 hits with over 100 comments. You can't imagine the comments on there. All kinds of comments. Now, I'm just saying one point. I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. The point of several of the comments is this nakuda. The nakuda is, and this is coming probably from some Litvish-oriented people, which is fine. In other words, Hegelbavitchers, you makarav everyone. You bring everyone into the hub. Everyone is good. Everyone is accepted. No judgments. Beautiful. But there's a time and place where you have to get down to nitty gritty and to work out issues. And I believe that's what he's saying here, the Alter Rebbe. There is a time for that. Now, when you recognize someone, whether it's your own child, your own family, or others, are not ready to hear it, you got to back off. Because if you don't back off, you make it worse. They won't want to walk into your house. Just this morning, give me an example. I get an email. I find out later it's a woman from London, and she's criticizing something I said, which she considered it against the Mashiachistan. Okay, and I didn't really say that, although maybe I intimated it, And she wrote me this long email, like, okay. What do you think I did? I answered her in a calm way. And I said, I hear you. However, there's another way to look at it. She became my best friend. She continued emailing me with a different tone for the next 10 minutes. 20 different emails. I said, I got to stop. I got to go down. I'm busy now. Diffuse the problem. I think, Moshe, you're very good at that, being the Agapai Neish Kodesh. You got to diffuse the problem. Very, very important. And Isser, you too, with those people coming and giving you all kinds of stuff. You got to diffuse the problem with a smile. With a smile. A smile goes so far. And I'm talking to myself because I don't always smile. But when I smile and I see the virtue of that smile, you can diffuse everyone. I mean, you can't imagine. I've gotten criticism about this from the right and the left. All kinds of people, from the top down, okay? My ongoing shita is diffusing the problem. I hear you. What about this? This is not exactly what I meant, Now, I'm not foolish. I know that I'm not going to have all lovers. I'm going to have haters. That's the way life is. When you take a public stance, you're going to have lovers and haters. Otherwise, get out of the kitchen, right? I understand that. But nevertheless, within the world of disagreement, and especially when you're passionate about them, it has to be this way. It cannot be this way. She writes to me about 770 being the palace of the king. So I wrote to her back, that verbiage is very fiery, and there are quite a few people that are upset with that verbiage. And then I said to her, so she said, I didn't mean that. I meant in Israel, the 770, Kfar Chabad is called the palace of the king. I said, you know what? In Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, that could work. In other words, Eretz Yisrael is passion. Israel is Eretz Yisrael can handle that. You can agree, disagree, but by us in America, it's too much. It's over the top. So again, I don't expect her to fully agree with me, but at least finally, you got to get common ground. Common ground with people who disagree with you. Symptom, yeah. You know what? There's a Kamarna, Einikel, a great Rebbe. This is the Treva, the Kamarna. I met him in Yerushalayim once, and I used to see him speaking to Rabbi Yoel Khan, and I'm a great chassid of Rabbi Yoel Khan. I'm a student of his, close student. So everything about him I really wanted to know. So I went over to him. This was in the Eida Haredis Rav's building. He lives on one, and he had a shul there. I forget his name, Moshe Halberstam, whatever his name was. So I said to him, could you tell me a little bit what you discussed with Rabbi Yoel? He said, I'll tell you one thing. We used to learn the Rebbe Sichas. But Rabbi Yoel's power was, to me, he says, in his ability to withhold and not say what need not be said. That I remember when the war broke out, and I remember Moshe, we were talking, was a little heated, and Moshe said, I don't want to talk about it. And that's it. He zipped his mouth. I don't know how long it lasted, but the ability to hold back, and this is a koach, it's called the koach of la'atzor, to stop yourself, to prevent yourself. It's much harder than the koach of ashpa, to give. So this idea of diffusing, the heated conversations and opinions and criticism takes the ability to hold yourself back, and for someone like me, frankly, it's very hard, because I like to say things the way it is, because that's my strength, and at times that's my downfall. So the ability to channel and to curtail and to sit back, that's very important. So they should help us. It's Rosh Chodesh today, Shvat Chevre. Today is Moshe. Hashem told Moshe to interpret the Torah. Rashi says in 70 languages, which means to reach out. And what we're doing, teaching Chassidus in English, Baruch Hashem. And again, Moshe Drucker, Mark Drucker, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sure you'll share. What'd you say?
He was open.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm sure I will hear from you.
Will, and I'm Shalom tonight, so we're doing Tanya tonight.
Okay, so you and Shalom will learn Tanya tonight. Zaygasund to everyone. We're going off now, and we'll see everyone Monday. Have a great Shabbos, and only good things. Mashiach now. Bye.